Welcome back to Punk Rock Theologian. We're continuing on our theme of suffering. This might be the last one on the topic. We'll see how it plays out. But today's message is continuing on the value of suffering. And it's not just for us, but suffering is impactful, it's influential. It makes a difference on the people who watch suffering happen. And the way we go through it says a lot about us. Another one of these quotes that I had written in a journal. I don't know who said it. I tried Googling it, it's not out there, but it says suffering reveals who we actually believe God to be in the depths of our hearts. And that's kind of the point for today. What you really, truly at bottom believe about God is revealed when you go through suffering. This has probably never been more true than when Jesus was crucified. And Mark 15:39 says, when the Roman officer who stood facing him saw how he had died, he said, "This man truly was the Son of God." This is a centurion. This is a man who has seen battle. He's seen death. He's probably overseen dozens or hundreds of crucifixions. And there's something that special about the way Jesus died, the way he endured this suffering that made such an impact on this man. And he said, this was the Son of God, because a normal person doesn't suffer this like that. And I think that what made the impact on him is how Jesus took his very last breath. John 19:30 picks up right after they give him sour wine, which is a story I don't have time for today. But it says, when Jesus had tasted it, he said, "It is finished." Then he bowed his head and gave up his spirit. That line, "it is finished," is the word tetelestai. It meant complete and done. But what's so important is this was not Jesus like a cry of despair. He didn't die groaning in agony. Another gospel tells us it was a loud cry. He didn't just whisper it as he died and gave up, but he shouted a victory cry of, "It is done." A centurion, someone who knows battle and death, has heard cries of victory and cries of defeat, and he knows the difference. And that's why this made such an impression on him, because he saw Jesus suffer well. He saw him praying for the people in front of him as he's hanging on the cross, praying, "Father, forgive them." He saw him die with a victory cry and went, that's not normal. This man was the Son of God. Now, you and I aren't the Son of God, but we can suffer well. We can follow Jesus' example. In Acts chapter 16, Paul and Silas are in Philippi. When some of the Jewish leaders get in a fight with them, they end up getting arrested. They are beaten without even getting a trial and thrown into the dungeon overnight. And famously, they end up worshiping at midnight, and there's an earthquake, and the chains fall off. And that's a great story, but that's not the part I want to focus on. Back up to them being beaten. It's actually illegal. They were Roman citizens, and you can't do that to a Roman citizen without a trial. Paul actually plays that card later in Acts 23 when he's about to be beaten. He says, "Can you do this to a Roman citizen?" And the guy who was the commanding officer there was terrified that he almost beat a Roman citizen. Paul and Silas are both Roman citizens. They actually reveal it like the next day, later in chapter 16. They could have easily played that citizen card, but they didn't. The only thing that makes any sense at all to me is it's the Holy Spirit told them, "Hey, don't defend yourself. Yes, I know it's wrong. I've got it under control. Just trust me." And they did. They trusted him. And it's only because they went through that and were in that dungeon that they were able to have that whole experience where they sang and the earthquake and the chains fall off and the jailer comes and gets them, and he's so shocked, and it made such an impact on him how they had gone through this that verse 30 says, "Then he brought them out and asked, 'Sirs, what must I do to be saved?'" Had they played the citizen card, that jailer wouldn't have heard them. They wouldn't have been in that dungeon. And probably the Philippian church wouldn't have been planted the way it was. How many people, I mean, that jailer's whole family we know are saved, but how many other people over how many generations were saved and lives transformed because these guys endured that suffering and they endured it well? Honestly, we probably wouldn't have the book of Philippians if this event hadn't taken place. And I really have to wonder if this is part of why Philippians is known as such a joyful, encouraging book, despite the fact that Paul is writing it from prison. I think that Paul probably couldn't help connecting the dots on this and recognizing while he's in prison, writing to the Philippians and remembering that that whole church exists because he was in prison unfairly. That's what it means, that suffering reveals who we actually believe God to be in the depths of our hearts. Being willing to face the suffering when we know it's unfair, when it's not okay, when it really stinks, going through that and trusting God through it makes an impact on the people around us. If we're going to claim that we follow Jesus and we trust God when life is going well, we need to show that we trust Him when it doesn't go well. That speaks louder than any argument you can ever make.